I never expected her to remember my name, let alone everything else. The library wasn't where people usually noticed me. It was where I went to disappear between shelves, headphones dangling around my neck, half reading, half waiting for time to pass. But she always noticed. Her voice wasn't loud, never needed to be. Just steady, careful. Like she weighed every word before letting it out. Back again, she said once, sliding a stack of returns across the counter. I nodded, pretending to study the scuffed edge of my library card. Yeah. Couldn't finish the last one. She looked at me like she didn't quite believe that. Then, a small smile, barely there. Or you just wanted a different reason to come back. I don't know why that line stuck with me. Maybe because she was right. It started small. Her remembering which aisle I drifted toward, history, biographies, shelves no one lingered in for long. Or the way she'd slide a book across the desk and tap once on the cover, like she was recommending it only to me. She had a way of filling the silence without speaking, her presence steady like the tick of the old clock above the doors. Mid-40s, maybe. The kind of calm you didn't earn until you'd already lived through storms no one else could see. I caught myself staring at her hands once, the way she adjusted her glasses by the frame instead of the bridge, careful, almost ritualistic. I folded a slip of paper in my palm until it was nothing but a hard little square, pretending that was what I was focused on. Most days, it was the same rhythm, me dropping books at the counter, her scanning them with that quiet beep, me mumbling a thanks. But sometimes, just sometimes, it shifted. One late afternoon, she glanced at the clock, then at me, before lowering her voice. You know this section's quiet, for a reason, she said, as if letting me in on a secret. Her eyes flicked toward the back row of shelves, the ones no one ever seemed to wander into. A joke, maybe. Or maybe not. I didn't know what to say, so I just laughed under my breath. Too soft, maybe too hopeful. She turned back to the books like nothing had happened, but the air between us held on to it. My life outside those walls was less than full. Nights stretched long. My phone lit up with conversations I never finished, messages typed out and erased before they could leave me. I wasn't lonely in the way movies show it. I was just paused. Like everyone else was moving on, and I was standing still. The library filled that space. Or maybe she did. There was a Thursday when it rained harder than it should have in September. I ducked inside, shoes wet, jacket damp. She was at the desk, hair pulled back loosely, strands falling forward in a way that looked unintentional, but maybe wasn't. You'll track mud, she said. Not scolding, more like she was amused. Sorry. I looked down, shifting on the mat, not moving further in. She reached over and nudged a folded towel toward me, the kind they used for spills. Here. Just, don't ruin the carpet. Our fingers didn't touch, but they could have. When I left that evening, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. I stepped outside, books under my arm, phone buzzing once in my pocket. A notification I almost ignored. It wasn't from a friend, or my mom, or some group chat I'd muted. It was an email. From the library. Subject line, one item left behind. I stopped on the steps, heart stumbling a little. I checked my bag. Everything was there. Except, no. My headphones. And the message wasn't the automated kind. It was signed with her name. Just her name. I went back for the headphones the next day, though I could have lived without them. They weren't worth the walk across town, not really. But her message had been brief, almost clipped, and I wanted to see what her face looked like when she handed them back. The library was near empty, a quiet Saturday morning. She was at the desk, glasses low on her nose, flipping through a return log. She didn't look up right away. "You came quick," she said finally, sliding open a drawer. The headphones were coiled neatly inside, like she'd taken the time to wind them herself. I took them, careful not to let my fingers brush hers. Couldn't leave my only excuse for music behind. A corner of her mouth lifted. "Excuse? You need excuses now?" I laughed under my breath, shaking my head. She had this way of cutting through my deflections without even trying. "I didn't leave right away." She offered tea, said the pot was already steeping in the back. I followed her through the staff door, something I wasn't sure I was even allowed to do, but she didn't seem to care. The staff room was small, cluttered with notices and half-empty mugs. She poured into 2 mismatched cups and handed me one. Her hand lingered on the handle, then pulled back. "Not many people drink tea anymore," I said. "I do," she answered simply, sitting across from me. "Coffee makes the days feel rushed. Tea slows them down." I nodded, sipping, though it was too hot. Steam fogged my glasses for a second, and she noticed. She smiled, not wide, just enough to crease the corners of her eyes. I wanted to ask her things. Too many things. If she always worked Saturdays. If she lived alone. If she had someone waiting at home. But instead, I asked, "Do you ever get tired of being surrounded by other people's words?" She looked at me then, really looked. A long pause before answering. "Sometimes," she said quietly. "But it's better than the silence when no one's around." Something in her tone caught me off guard. It wasn't loneliness exactly, but it was close. That was the first time I imagined her outside the library. I saw her walking into an empty apartment, setting down her bag on the same spot on the counter every night. A lamp turned on, maybe a meal reheated. Silence, stretched out until morning. The thought made my chest tighten. And yet, I reminded myself of the gap between us. She was at least twice my age, maybe more. She carried years I hadn't touched yet. Maybe she was someone's mother. Maybe someone's ex-wife. I didn't ask, but the ring mark faintly etched on her finger hinted at something that used to be there. We sat in silence for a while, sipping tea. It should have been ordinary, but the air felt charged, like even the smallest movement meant more than it should. When I finally stood to leave, she reached out to take my cup. Her fingers brushed mine, light, quick, accidental, except it didn't feel accidental at all. For a second too long, neither of us moved. And then she pulled her hand back, cleared her throat, and said, "Don't lose those headphones again." I don't know why that moment stayed with me, maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. I started staying later. Not on purpose, at least not at first. The library closed at 9, and I'd find myself still tucked in a chair at 8:50, pretending to finish a page I hadn't moved past in 10 minutes. She noticed, of course. She always noticed. "You know, you don't have to wait until the lights go out," she said one evening, stepping into the aisle where I like the quiet at the end, I muttered. "Feels different." Her arms folded loosely across her chest. Different how? I didn't answer. Couldn't. That night, she walked me to the doors as she locked up. The hallway lights buzzed faintly. My hand tightened on the strap of my bag. Hers lingered on the keys. Neither of us moved for a moment. Then, footsteps. A man's voice. "Mom? You almost ready?" I froze. She froze harder. He was older than me, maybe close to my age, maybe a little more. Tall, hair damp from the rain. He gave me a polite, dismissive glance, the kind people save for strangers who don't matter. "Almost," she said quickly, slipping the keys into her pocket. Her tone was different now. Brisk. Neutral. I mumbled a good night, didn't wait for her reply. The next day I didn't go. Or the one after. But on the third, I found myself there again, restless, unable to keep away. She didn't mention my absence. Just slid a book toward me with a sticky note tucked inside the cover. I opened it later, at the table by the window. Not a note, exactly, just a sentence highlighted in yellow. Some silences are heavier than words. When I looked up, she was shelving books across the room. Her hand lingered on the spine too long, like she was waiting for me to notice. The air between us shifted after that. Smaller distances felt larger. A brush of sleeves when passing in the narrow aisle. The way she adjusted her glasses but didn't look up when I spoke. One evening, she asked, "Why this place? You could be anywhere." I shrugged, eyes on the worn tabletop. Anywhere else feels temporary. Her breath caught, almost like she was about to say something back, but didn't. Instead, she pushed the sugar jar closer to me, though neither of us had tea. It happened again, almost. I was helping her carry a box of returns into the back room. The box slipped, too heavy, and she steadied it with me. Our shoulders pressed together, close, too close. Her hand brushed against mine on the edge of the cardboard. We both froze, the box still in midair. Her eyes flicked to my mouth for half a second, too quick, too dangerous. And then she stepped back, cleared her throat. "Careful. You'll drop it." The box thudded onto the table between us, loud, the final. I swallowed hard, nodded. Said nothing. But my pulse was still racing when I left, and I knew hers was too. It was late again. Closing time. She offered to walk me out, though she didn't need to. The night air was cool, damp with the kind of mist that made the street lamps halo. We stopped at the bench just outside the library doors. She sat, tugging her cardigan closer. I stayed standing for a moment before lowering myself beside her. Neither of us spoke. The silence pressed in, thick. Finally, she said, "You shouldn't stay so late. People will wonder." I glanced at her. "Who's wondering?" She didn't answer right away. Her jaw tightened. "My son." The words landed heavy. I stared at the sidewalk, tracing a crack with my shoe. "I didn't mean," I started, but the sentence folded before I finished it. She sighed, soft, almost lost in the breeze. "He's protective. Thinks I don't notice, but he watches." A pause. "And he's right. It's not simple." I shifted, heart thudding, but tried to keep my voice steady. "It doesn't feel complicated. Not to me." Her laugh was quiet, not amused, not unkind, just weary. "That's because you're 20. Complications find you later." I wanted to argue. To tell her the last thing I felt around her was naive. But I stayed quiet, my hands clasped too tightly in my lap. She turned her head then, really looking at me. "You remind me of someone," she said. "When I was younger. He used to wait for me after class. We'd sit like this, not saying much. Just being." Her voice softened, but something in it cracked, just slightly. "It didn't last. Nothing that starts uneven ever does." I swallowed, the words catching before I could push them out. "Maybe this is different." Her eyes flicked to me, sharp, searching. Then they softened again, but she shook her head. "You don't know what you're saying." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, staring at the pavement. "Maybe not. But I know I think about this. About you. More than I should." The confession slipped out quieter than I intended, almost like it wasn't meant for her to hear. Her breath hitched, barely audible. She clasped her hands together in her lap, fingers tightening, loosening, tightening again. "Don't," she whispered. Not firm, pleading. But she didn't move away. We sat like that, the mist settling on our shoulders, the street empty. My heart hammered so loud it felt impossible she couldn't hear it. For a moment, it felt like the whole night balanced on her hand, on the way her thumb brushed her knuckle, restless, nervous. I almost reached for it. Almost. She turned to me, lips parted, eyes caught between fear and something else. "Tell me," she said quietly. "If I let you, what happens then?" The question hung there, trembling, heavier than any answer I could give. The next week, she wasn't there. Her desk sat empty, chair tucked in, a neat stack of returns waiting for hands that never came. Another librarian worked the counter, someone younger, brisk, efficient. She scanned my books without looking at me, slid them back across, and moved on to the next person in line. I told myself maybe it was her day off. But when I came back 2 days later, then 3, she was still gone. On the 4th day, I asked. "She's taking some time," the young librarian said, not unkindly but with no details. Some time. 2 words, vague enough to weigh me down. I found myself replaying everything. The bench. Her question. "If I let you, what happens then?" Had I pushed too far? Said too much? I almost typed out a message, fingers hovering over the keyboard late at night. I had her email, she'd sent it about the headphones. My drafts filled with lines that felt both too much and not enough. "Hope you're okay. Sorry if do you want me to stop coming?" None of them sent. One night, I dreamed I saw her walking down the library aisles, hair loose, cardigan slipping off one shoulder. She stopped at the history shelf, pulled out a book, and turned to me like nothing had happened. I woke up with the echo of it lodged in my chest, sharp and unfinished. When she finally returned, it wasn't the same. She greeted me like a stranger. Polite. Careful. No lingering looks, no half-smiles. Just a nod, a book slid across, her eyes already shifting to the next task. I tried to make light conversation, something small, safe. She answered in single words. Yes. No, maybe. Each one clipped, final. The air between us, once heavy with something unsaid, now felt scrubbed clean, sanitized. Then I noticed the ring. Not the faded band mark I'd seen before, but an actual ring. Thin, gold, resting on her finger like it had been waiting to return. It silenced me more than anything else could have. That night, I didn't go home right away. I sat on the library steps after closing, bag at my feet, hands jammed in my jacket pockets. People passed, lights flicked off, and still I sat there, waiting for nothing. I thought about knocking on the staff door. About catching her in the hall, asking if it was real, if it meant what I thought it did. But I didn't move. My phone glowed in my hand, draft still unsent. Words blinking back at me, cursor tapping like a clock. Are we okay? I hovered, thumb ready. Then I locked the screen. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. And maybe she had too. It happened on a Tuesday night. Not planned. Not rehearsed. I was leaving just as she was locking up. The new ring still sat on her finger, catching the glow of the street lamp. I'd told myself to stop coming, to let the distance settle where she wanted it. But I couldn't. Wait, I said, before I could stop myself. She turned, keys in hand, expression unreadable. For a second I thought she'd just nod and walk on. But instead, she let the keys drop into her pocket and stood there, still, like she was bracing for something. I stepped closer, not too close. Just enough so she'd know this wasn't about books anymore. I keep telling myself not to ask, I said, words rushing out before I lost the nerve. But I need to know. Did I ruin something? Her eyes softened, though her face didn't. You didn't ruin anything. Then why does it feel like you disappeared? She exhaled, slow, like she'd been holding it in too long. Because I had to. We stood in the quiet, the city muted around us. Finally, she said, I was married a long time. Too long. Leaving wasn't easy. Coming back to myself hasn't been either. And then, her voice faltered. Then you started showing up. And I let it mean more than it should. The admission landed somewhere between my ribs. I wanted to tell her it didn't matter, that none of it mattered. But the truth pressed harder. You think I don't know the difference between infatuation and something real? I asked. Her laugh was small, almost bitter. At your age? I think I'd be a fool to believe it's not just a phase you'll regret later. I shook my head, the words tangling in my throat. You don't get it. For me, this isn't, I stopped, swallowed. This isn't temporary. The silence stretched. I could feel the decision balancing in the air. She rubbed her thumb against the ring, turning it absent-mindedly, not looking at me. Finally, she said, almost a whisper, if I step toward you, everything changes. If I don't, we go back to how it was. Her hand stilled on the ring. Her eyes met mine. I can't promise I won't regret either choice. For a moment, neither of us moved. The whole night felt suspended, like the world was waiting to see if we'd break it. And then, she let out a tired laugh. You're too young to be this serious. I smiled, faint, not defensive. Maybe. Or maybe you're just used to people not staying. Something shifted in her eyes at that. She reached out, not all the way, just enough that her fingers brushed the sleeve of my jacket. Barely a touch. But it held more weight than anything else could have. Her hand lingered for one breath. Two. Then she pulled it back. Okay, she whispered. Not a yes. Not a no. Just, okay. And somehow, it was enough to carry me home. Time smoothed the edges. Not all at once, not dramatically. Just slowly, like water wearing down stone. I still went to the library, though not every day. Sometimes I stayed away for a week, let the distance breathe. And yet, each time I came back, her eyes found me. Not with surprise anymore, not with hesitation. Just recognition. The ring disappeared again. Quietly, without comment. She never explained. I never asked. We carved out a rhythm that felt less like trespassing and more like belonging. Tea in the staff room when no one else was around. A book slid across the desk with a page marked by her hand. Sitting on the same bench outside, not speaking unless we needed to. One evening, as she poured tea, she said, "You always drink it too hot." I smiled, watching the steam curl between us. "And you always wait until it's lukewarm." Her laugh this time wasn't bitter. Just soft. It wasn't perfect. Her son still appeared sometimes, sharp-eyed, suspicious. She kept boundaries tighter when he was near, her voice clipped, her smile faint. I felt the distance then, but I didn't fight it. Because when he left, when the doors closed, she'd let herself ease again. Her hand brushing mine when she passed me sugar. The silence between us no longer heavy, but steady. One rainy night, months later, we sat at the same bench where it had nearly broken us. She pulled her cardigan tighter, the mist clinging to her hair. "Do you ever wonder," she said, "if this is enough?" I thought about the paused texts, the unasked questions, the nights we both pretended to sleep. "Yeah," I admitted. "But then I think, maybe it's not supposed to be more. Maybe this is what enough looks like. She looked at me for a long time. Her eyes weren't searching anymore. They were resting. It wasn't about declarations. No big confessions, no promises we couldn't keep. It was smaller than that. It was the way she saved me a seat by the window, the way I brought her coffee I knew she'd never drink but always accepted. It was her remembering I hated mornings, me remembering she always checked the locks twice before leaving. The kind of love no one else would notice. But we did. One afternoon, I arrived later than usual. 8:47 a.m. was long past, the place buzzed with students. She was at the desk, hair pulled back, glasses slipping down her nose. When our eyes met, she didn't smile right away. She just exhaled, shoulders easing, like something she'd been carrying all morning finally dropped. I walked over, placed my card on the desk. She slid it back, fingers brushing mine, light but certain. "Still too hot," she murmured, nodding at the thermos in my hand. I shook my head. "Perfect." Her smile was small, almost hidden. But I saw it. And that was enough. 1.